I love solving mysteries, and so does the world of tabletop gaming. Because of this, there are tons of mystery games, from your small 15-minute one-shots to games that contain multiple cases, some of them with an overarching story that you'll have to learn as you play through multiple sessions. Now, Studio H has decided to throw their hat in the ring with Suspects. Claire Harper takes the stage. This involves Detective Claire Harper as she goes through 3 cases in order to solve the mysteries that happen to occur while she's around. Now, will the spotlight actually land on her and she'll be able to stand out, or will she be lost in a sea of other detectives on the tabletop? What you see here is the components for Chapter 1, Murder at Alistar Manor. First thing you're going to do is take a look at the introductory page. This will include a little story and how Claire ended up becoming the detective for this mystery. More often than not, she just happens to be in the place and someone hears that there's a very good detective nearby. They will also tell you what your starting cards and documentations are. The game will come with usually multiple documents for that mystery. So these will be revealed in time, and they will have things such as, in this case, a map of the manor, but there could be other items depending on what your mystery is. Now, the cards are where the meat of this game is going to take place. So for example, this said card 1, you'll go to the one numbered 1 and read the other side of the card. I'm trying my best not to show too much here, but ideally you're going to read the cards. It may give you more things, as well as have you go to other cards with different numbers. Cards will come in a variety of people you talk to, locations you visit, and clues. Some may be some other things. For example, this actually edits the map that you get. You may also come across cards like this that may require you to find these symbols first before you can actually view that card. Now, most mystery games are going to judge you on how you do this, be it an actual timer or how many stops you have to make, and this one is no exception. Those cards are how you grade yourself. Going back to the introductory page, you're going to have this grid here with multiple questions. These are the questions that you need to answer. They will have multiple things as who done it, how they do it, what did they need, and maybe some other more side questions, the kind of things you might expect in a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective game. What's different here is instead of answering all these when you're ready, at any time you can answer one of these questions if you feel confident about it. And you will put an X there. I didn't put an X because I'm just the kind of person who doesn't like to write on game materials if he doesn't have to, especially if I'm reviewing it. By doing so, you are saying, for example, I know what, let's say, the motive was. I'm going to put an X there if I did it in 30 cards or less. If I did it in 31 or 45, I put it here. 46 or more, here. The quicker you can answer the question, the more points you will get at the end of the game, if you answer it right, of course. Once you have answered all the questions, no matter how long it takes, you will then open this solution packet in which it will answer in detail each question, as well as telling you what cards sort of point out like, oh, you'd find this out on card 30 or 52. At the very end, you're going to add up your score, see how many you got right, how many you got wrong, and depending on how many cards you revealed and looked at when you answer those questions, and compare it to a score chart. You will be able to see the score, and they'll have different ranges, so from 0 to 14, maybe 15 to then 20, so on and so forth. It is unique to each case. They have different number of questions and scoring. This is all I can show you in terms of this case without spoiling too much. I have showed you the introduction, but you're going to read that first anyway, so that shouldn't spoil too much for you. In terms of the setting, it's fine. It's nothing that I think will blow you out of the water. It's the 1930s, and it's the kind of stuff maybe you'd expect. Though in terms of the game itself, I do think this actually does a great job of taking something that we've seen in almost every single detective game and doing a really clever thing to make it stand out. We've seen plenty that have a deck of cards that you go through with numbers. It's not new. This does have an interesting mechanic of some cards you'll have to compare to each other. I've covered these up as best as I can, but as you can see, this purple line doesn't match where it is to this card, which if it did may trigger something or let you know that it's connected to that card in a way that you can guarantee like, yes, this is that person. Once again, try not to spoil too much there. Going back to the symbols I mentioned before, the ones with you need to find a certain number before you can read these cards. I wasn't as big of a fan of that. To me, when I was trying to do that, it felt more arbitrary when I found those symbols. It wasn't like, oh, this is symbols, I need to ask people questions about that. No, some of them just came up randomly, and I didn't find them all sometimes. And then when I answered questions at the very end of the game, it sort of sounded like sometimes they're like, oh, you would have found it if you did this. I'm like, I couldn't talk to the guy, and it had important information. So that was one thing that did bug me a bit, was that one being locked. This comparing, I did like. I love the idea of like each time you got a new card, like you compare like, oh, this is the one, this is what matches. So that one was good. The symbols on the card and stuff, it was a bit too random. If this were to continue, I would need to see them being a bit more obvious of how to find them. The comparing usually made it pretty obvious, finding a key for a door. Well, I know where to look for keys or how to find a key, where people might hide keys. These felt a bit random. So either they need to be designed so that if I know I'm looking for, I need to ask a lot about medicine questions to talk to the doctor, I can find and actually ask people medicine questions or health related ones, something a bit more concrete for me to latch on rather than what felt more like randomly finding them. What I love is the end game scoring. Now, many detective games will grade you on your score, usually by how many cards you flip. Maybe there's a timer if it's more on like an escape room kind of thing. And so you're desperately trying to find the answers for everything while trying to do them all in time, which stinks sometimes because if you've ever played some of these, sometimes you're like, I know who did it. It's done. I know for a fact there could be no one else, but I don't know how, or I haven't found the murder weapon yet. So you have to keep searching. You feel like you really have to push as close as you can to the timer. This separates each question, meaning you can answer the question at different times in the casing, meaning you can grade them differently. I really like this because it actually opens up a lot of different avenues. First off, let's go to my previous example. You know who done it. You can answer that one much earlier than the other ones. Because of that, you now have the option to not feel guilty and go farther out. You can go to the farthest 46 cards. You could read every card. Well, I think some card interactions remove cards, depending on what you do. But for the most part, read nearly every card, but still answer plenty of the other questions and feel pretty good. That means people like me who love to explore don't have to feel guilty. We just have to decide maybe answering some of those questions earlier than we feel comfortable with. That way we can still maybe, if we're not as confident on some of those questions, we can decide to push those. Sure, we lose some points, but we're not losing a ton or feel guilty because we just need some more confirmation. Another interesting thing I noticed was, yes, we do know all the questions right off the bat, so you know what to look for. But because they separated them and because you know them, I felt that the difficulties of these cases were a bit higher than at least some of the other mystery games that I've played beforehand. I felt like there were more leaps of faith I had to do, as well as more red herrings, and even some interesting twists that I wasn't even sure until the very end. I rarely felt nearly as confident on questions compared to some other games. Even in this first one, I can tell you I did not have every question solved within 30 cards. I feel they did a good job of providing difficult cases, but providing this scoring system allowed them to make these cases more challenging without punishing the detective so much. As, let's face it, we're not Claire, we're not Sherlock Holmes, we're not Batman. I'm Will. There's a reason why I don't solve actual cases for a living. There's one final important thing I believe this scoring system has been able to do, but unfortunately, full disclosure, I haven't been able to test it. You see, there is a variant where you can decide to play this game competitively, having people, when they're feel confident on an answer, instead of saying, I think it was person A, they could write it down, close it, and write it that they answered it within 25 cards, put it aside, and then you all grade yourselves at the end and see how you do. I played this once cooperatively and twice solo because, I'm going to be honest, when I first read that, I was like, look, I played Watson and Holmes, the other competitive mystery solving game I played. Well, Clue if you count that as well. Either way, both of them, I hate the competitive style because you feel guilty that you have to answer every question so fast, and if you get one wrong, you're just out. So I was like, I'm not going to try it. It's a variant. Quick fun note, while editing this, it just occurred to me there is a competitive detective game I've played and enjoyed, and that's Detective City of Angels. This one, though, plays a little differently when someone is playing as the Chisel, pretty much a almost not exactly 1v all, as there's still some competition, but the Chisel is trying their best to hide it rather than everyone being in sort of the same footing and learning the mysteries together. It does play differently, but it's still an oversight that I completely forgot that I felt like was worth enough for me to re-record this small part to put in the episode. I will say I have not played through the expansion parts of City of Angels, so maybe when I get more suspects, I can then play the two together and see which version I like more. After playing these 3 cases, I think they've actually have the perfect scoring method for a competitive style mystery game. Because each question is separated, you can screw up one. You don't have to feel bad that you didn't realize it was Mr. Plum in the dining room with the wrench instead of the candlestick. You still can score yourself separately on each question, and because of that, you don't have to feel as guilty about being fast. I could have gotten the killer earlier than you, but maybe you got more of the other questions earlier. So the bit of confidence and how you feel comfortable about it doesn't get dictated because you need to have everything perfect. I really love that because I can imagine in the end, once you're scoring things, you can laugh at each other for getting one wrong. You all get to see it at the same time. And in terms of flipping cards over, if you don't agree, I forget how they say in the rule book right now, but what I would probably do is you take turns of where you want to go. So let's say I wasn't as confident about the butler as the person to my right is. So when the person to my right, they may be like, you know what, I want to go to the kitchen and investigate there. But when it comes to my turn, I'm going to go like, I need to ask the butler a few more questions. I really hate that there's only 3 cases in here because this didn't really occur to me as something that I would do until after all 3 cases. Like I said, I was burned before on competitive mystery solving, but I would absolutely be willing to try this out in a competitive scene because I think I can still get the story experience. I can still feel a little bit cocky in terms of like, okay, I think I know who did it. And it'd be really funny, if you do see that person be like, answer a question really early, and then of course they're way off when it comes to answering the question. It's going to be, I think, a much more enjoyable game, and it's going to be a blast doing so. This will allow people to take the avenues they want. It's still a shared table experience. You still get to see the pressure of someone like, oh, why did they answer the murderer first? I'm pretty sure on the weapon, but they're taking a big leap of faith. But it's not all in, and you get to have more fun at the end because you're all scoring together. You don't just see me read the envelope and be like, I'm out, guys. Or I win. You get to compare scoring. So I feel this scoring system, they've cracked the nut in making one that's great somehow cooperatively and competitively. If they make a new ones of these, I'm absolutely trying one of them competitively, and I think it's going to be a blast. In the end, I do feel while the setting is fine, nothing that would blow my mind in excitement, the character I think needs some more expansions and fleshing out for me to connect more with her. The mechanics are spot on. The scoring system allows for more interesting mysteries, more challenging ones, and somehow perfectly balanced a way that could work for both a cooperative and competitive sense. Crits and misses for suspects. Claire Harper takes the stage. Crits. Splitting up the scoring system so they are scored separately allows for players to not feel as guilty if they're not confident in some of them while answering some earlier in order to try to achieve a better score. This also rewards so many other things, including those of us who like to explore every corner of the world of mystery that they're in, or those of us who are very confident in some things but feel bad that they can't really find the right answer for just one of the questions. I found the mysteries challenging but not punishing. This is the kind of difficulty I like to see in mystery games, one that challenged me a little bit but isn't so convoluted or strange I don't know what's going on, while at the same time not being so easy that I feel like I'm just being talked down to. Misses. This one is a bit of a pain because I can't show you, but on the solution sheet, when you're reading the results, some of them go across the page while some of them are in weird paragraphs that go side by side. It's a weird formatting issue that goes back and forth that bothers me a bit and I wish I could show you, but hopefully they fix this formatting in the future versions or additions to the Suspects line. Throughout the game, you'll find moments where you can compare cards or need certain cards to unlock the card. This wasn't too bad for some of them. For example, if you need to find a key to unlock a door, that's pretty simple. I know I need to look for a key, and I know when something tends to point to if someone has a key or not, or if I see a key on the wall. There are, though, some cards that say, only read this once you reveal 3 or 2 of the symbol. And I didn't like those because most of the time it didn't feel nearly as an obvious way to find those symbols. They tend to come up if someone, for example, if you needed 3 medical symbols. Well, maybe someone happened to bring up something that happened to someone, and when you asked them about their schedules, it felt a bit more random when you came across those symbols. I think they should stick more to how they did the ones that either matched up specifically, in like a door to a key or a footprint to a shoe kind of deal. Those were much more rewarding and made more sense for me to compare things rather than finding arbitrary symbols in order to unlock what often held some pretty important information. I am praising the endgame scoring a bit much because I actually really loved it. To me, this was something I had a lot more fun in a way of the mysteries were actually a bit more challenging than I've been used to in recent games I've played, but the questions allow me to still feel pretty good at making that leap of faith on this one. You're like, you know what? I will answer this at the 29 card count because I think this one's safe, but I'm going to go explore some more. I'm the kind of guy who plays video games who goes around, searching every corner to get the mystery item or treasure box, and to not be punished by that if something in particular, if there's a question that I really don't feel comfortable on, but still be able to answer other ones earlier, makes it feel much better. I will say that in terms of counting cards, if you're like me, you sort them into piles, not by, 5, 10, 15. I do it by red herrings. This is cards talking to people. This is evidence, which makes it hard to count. So you probably want something that you can use, like some dice to count the number of cards externally. I actually have this little health tracker from Magic that I usually use for Commander, but I just did went up every time I counted a card, making it easy for me to make sure I knew how far I was along the scoring line. I do think this is a successful detective storyline. I really love the way the game works. I want to know more about Claire because I like this game and therefore I like the detective. And I'm really hoping that they release more suspects. And I would love for them to release ones that have more cases, more overarching storyline, and going with the more cases, that giving people the chance to I want to play mostly cooperative, but I'll try one competitive. Or if you're the person who has a bit more of that competition spirit, you can play this competitively without feeling that it's all in or out. Let me know what your thoughts on if you've played other detective style games that you think do a good job scoring like this. And if you think there is another game out there that successfully does a competitive detective mystery solving game. I don't know one. I'd love to hear from you in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you think someone would be interested in this game, please share it with them. Until then, I'm Will, and this has been Roll for Crit.